In EstimatorXpress, once you've completed the estimating side of the software, you can then generate a stage payment plan for your customer. This will tell them when they need to be paying, on which dates, and for what areas of the job that you've completed for them. For the stage payment plan to be created correctly, you need to ensure that your build program has been completed, and so that it is structured in the manner that you will see through to the end of the job. This is important as the stage payments are based upon the calculations created in your build program in the Gantt chart. So the correct payment is collected at the correct time as stated on the plan. Once you are happy with the build program, it is simply a case of going to the quote and output section of the software, which I have just now clicked. And in the written documents section of the software, go to stage payments, which in this version of the software is the fourth option down. To open it, I simply click on the open button here. After a few seconds, you will see the stage payment schedule has appeared. You will notice that the software has defaulted to the Terms tab. This is where the software takes the terms for this individual job and applies them to your various phases for the job at hand. To work through the settings, we will start at the top and work our way down. To begin with, you decide whether to take a deposit. If you would like to take a deposit, we simply click on the Take a Deposit box, select the date that you would like to take the deposit on. So in this instance, I'm going to take it perhaps from the 5th of August, like so, and we select the deposit amount. It's perhaps important to note that the deposit you take will need to cover the cost of the first few phases of the job. So it's important the deposit amount is set at a relevant figure where it will cover all your costs of this first few weeks or perhaps even month of the job. In this, for instance, I have selected 10%. This will ensure more than enough is collected to cover the first few stages of the job and leaves you comfortable in terms of the ongoing costs for the job, payments to your staff, and indeed materials required for the job at hand. The next stage of the stage payment is to select the billing frequency. It's quite common for people, for businesses, to collect bills or payments at the start or end of bill phases. In this, for instance, we have selected bill at the start and or the end of the bill phases. You could also select billing at a regular interval as you see fit. You can also set the billing to be set at regular intervals. This could be every set number of days or months. For example, you could tell software to bill every 7 days and select a starting date for that billing frequency. For example, you could select the 5th of August this coming year. For this particular instance, for this particular demonstration, I will bill at the start and end of the build phases. However, when billing at the start and end of build phases, you can set up the process here by clicking on the build phases charging methodology box. And after a couple of seconds, this following screen appears for the build phase settings. And for each of the phases, you can select when the bill becomes due. I'll use the default settings here, which means the value will become due for materials at the start of the phase, and the labour, plant, subcontract and sundry items at the end of the bill phase. I'm going to apply that to every area within the job itself. As I scroll down, you can see that this is the case. The next section that we look into is inflation, retentions and defects liability. First of all, we select whether to include inflation on the sales price. I would say it's important to select this as a yes, as a tick, simply so any inflation on costs as the months go on are covered by the sales price, including inflation. It is also important to have an interim bill retention and a final bill retention. This will allow covering of any costs that may occur that aren't expected, that aren't run-of-the-mill costs that you expect during the job. And of course, a final bill retention for the end of the job ensures costs are covered for any adjustments, any flaws that need to be covered at the end of the billing period. Once we're happy with the inflation, retentions and defects liability section, we then move on to the final option here, which is the VAT settings. Once again, we would say this is an important area to consider. So I'll click on the box that says charge VAT on payments, and we can set a set percentage, as you may imagine. At the moment, VAT in the UK is 20%, so we can set it at the default 20%. You may also wish to consider if you are not VAT registered as input only, and it's marked in brackets, not VAT registered. So the VAT is charged on top, so it doesn't become a cost to yourself. Once we've completed the important information on the Terms tab, we can then move across to the other tabs and get them completed, so the stage payment schedule is completed in a way that shows the information that is required. First of all, I click on the Header and Footer tab. This allows me to include any information that I would like to show that perhaps isn't in there by default. To ensure all information that is required for the stage payment schedule, I will add at the center, at the top, some custom text. I'm going to include the company details. I'll pop them in place. I've pre-completed this information, so I've added in the HBXL address. I can then hit Apply Changes, and in the middle will pop up the contact details as required. I've also already done this for the footer of the page here for the stage payment schedule. If I scroll down, you can see the customer's details here at the bottom, the left, center, and right hand side of the page. Once you're happy with the header and footer information, we can then move across to the tab for fonts. I simply click on the Fonts tab, and with this, it will allow you to select the font style, the font itself, the font size, its style in terms of whether it's bold, italic, and underlined, and of course, if you'd like to give the color or a color to the font or the document. Finally, we click across to the Headings tab. Once again, this allows us to alter information that's showing on the stage payment calculation. The software on the main Headings tab allows you to alter the main title for the document. I will leave it as the stage payment schedule. It fits perfectly for the page at hand. And of course, the opening paragraph that we have here, we can address that as we see fit. Once again, I will leave it as it is, as it perfectly fits the document and for its uses. To ensure that everything has been applied as we need, we simply click on the Apply Changes button down here at the bottom, like so. And the software will then generate the information as required, as we've set up the settings as we've gone along here. We now have completed this stage payment schedule for your client at hand. As you can see, along the top, we clearly have the company details. Let's scroll to the bottom. We clearly have the customer's details for the job at hand. And of course, in the center, as you'd imagine, we have the full breakdown for the stage payment schedule. This document can now be given to your client so they can see what they need to be paying and when. In the final documentation for the stage payment schedule, we do indeed have a cash flow report for internal business use. So if I click through on this cash flow report, after a couple of moments, the software will pop up the report for us. For the cash flow report, we can make adjustments to anything that appears on this form. We can retitle the name should you see fit. You can choose whether to include overheads as a cost, whether to include the VAT payments as a cost, when the VAT quarter ends, when the payment remittance is due, or the payment remittance in terms of days, and the remittance period. Once you're happy with all the details, as always, we hit Apply Changes, and that will update the report that you have on screen. Finally, as with all reports on EstimatorXpress, we can zoom in and zoom out on the reports. We can move backwards and forwards between the pages simply by clicking Previous or the next page, as you may imagine. We can click on the Print button and print off the report. And so we can print that off. We can export it simply by clicking on the Export button and selecting the file type we would like to export it as. We can export the cash flow report to Excel as an Excel file. We can save any of the adjustments to the library, so next time you use the Stage Payments option, we have the option set up as we have worked through it on this report. We can then import from library, and this means in plain English you can import previous settings that you've set up to be used on this report. And if you set any keywords on any of the reports, you can click on View Keywords, and it will allow you to view the keywords that you have selected. And essentially that is the Stage Payment Calculator and how you adjust the settings to make it appear and flow as you see fit.